My name is Ellie. And for most of my life, I believed that if I stayed kind, stayed quiet, and stayed useful, my family would love me. Not just tolerate me, not just use me, actually love me. That belief was the foundation I built everything else on. The way I showed up for every family holiday. The way I helped my sister Claire plan her wedding, even though I was barely invited. The way I worked overtime to pay for my grandmother's groceries without telling anyone. I told myself that love just looked different in our family. A little colder. A little distant. But love. Still. There was one person who made me feel like I wasn't imagining things. My grandmother. Margaret. She called me her moonlight girl. Said I had her hands. Her calm. Her way of noticing things others missed. Every summer I'd visit her beach house in Rhode Island. We'd sit on the porch, sipping chamomile tea, watching the tide roll in and out like time didn't exist. That porch was the only place in the world I ever felt truly still. When she passed away, something in me cracked. It wasn't just grief. It was the feeling that I had lost my only anchor. The only person who didn't need me to perform to deserve her love. But I held on to what she told me the last time we spoke. She looked me right in the eyes and said, "If something doesn't feel right when I'm gone, promise me you'll fight." I didn't know what she meant at the time. I do now. It started at her will reading. I walked into Samuel Wyatt's law office expecting something straightforward. A few legal formalities. Some paperwork. And maybe the comfort of hearing my grandmother's wishes honored. I wasn't prepared for the way my sister smiled. Or the way my mother dabbed at dry eyes that hadn't cried. Or how my father kept glancing at his phone like he had somewhere better to be. I sat there, not knowing that in less than 5 minutes, I would hear the words that would change everything I thought I knew about my family. Words that would make me question whether I was ever truly seen by them at all. Words that would start a war I never wanted to fight, but one I now realize I was born for. The lawyer cleared his throat like he was trying to swallow glass. Samuel Wyatt. A stiff man in an even stiffer suit. Shuffled a stack of papers on his polished desk. He looked everywhere but at me. My mother sat to my left. Her pearls gleaming. Her perfume thick enough to taste. To my right, Claire adjusted her coat like she was bored already. Her nails were perfectly manicured. The same pale pink she always chose when she wanted to look innocent. Her smile was the first thing that felt off. Not polite. Not sad. Just a little too pleased. Samuel began the reading in that neutral, distant tone lawyers love. First, the standard acknowledgments. Some antique furniture to an old friend. A modest donation to a charity. Then came the part that made the air shift. Regarding the primary residence located at 117 Harborview Lane, Newport, Rhode Island. The property is hereby bequeathed in full to Claire Bennett. The room didn't go silent. It froze. I felt the blood rush from my face so fast my ears rang. I sat absolutely still, trying to keep my expression calm, while every part of me screamed. Claire's smile widened. My mother looked straight ahead. Hands folded like she was in church. My father finally looked up from his phone and nodded like this was expected. Like it made sense. But it didn't. It made no sense at all. I had spent nearly every weekend with my grandmother in her final year. I cleaned that house, stocked her fridge, changed her oxygen tanks, and rubbed her feet when they swelled. Claire came maybe twice, stayed for 20 minutes, and complained about the lack of Wi-Fi both times. Still, I said nothing. I kept my face blank. My hands folded just like my mother's. The silence felt like a test. A trap. A stage. Samuel looked nervous now. Reading faster. He moved on to the smaller items. Jewelry. Cookbooks. A music box I remembered from childhood. Then he said my name. Ellie Bennett shall receive the following items: the jewelry box and the vintage cookbook collection. That was it. Not the beach house. Not the sunroom she called our sanctuary. Not even the teacups we always used. The beach house, our place, was gone. Given to Claire like a reward she didn't earn. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink. I just stared at that smile on my sister's lips and thought, no, something's not right. I remembered the last time I was on that porch with Grandma. The way she held my hand and said, "This house is yours. Ellie, don't let them tell you otherwise." And then I remembered the envelope. The one tucked away in the bottom drawer of my desk. The one she pressed into my hands and made me promise to open if things didn't feel right. Now, they didn't just feel wrong. They felt rigged. And that smile on Claire's face, that was the confirmation I didn't know I was waiting for. Something was about to unravel. And I was going to be the one to pull the thread. I didn't say anything when the meeting ended. Everyone stood up, exchanged polite nods, made small talk about traffic and renovations. Claire even joked about knocking down the sunroom to make space for a rooftop deck. I just sat there. Samuel offered me a copy of the will. Said his assistant would email it later. He didn't meet my eyes. The moment I stepped outside, the cold slapped me. Newport air always had a bite to it. But this was different. This felt like betrayal. Like my skin knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I got in my car and just sat there with my hands gripping the steering wheel, like it was the only solid thing left. Grandma wouldn't do this to me. Not like this. Not after everything. I started going over it in my head. Piece by piece. The dates. The details. Her mental state in those final weeks. She was still sharp the last time we spoke. She told me the lavender bushes were dying early. She remembered the name of the neighbor's cat. She remembered to press that envelope into my hand. That envelope. I had kept it in the bottom drawer of my desk, tucked beneath some old receipts and birthday cards. I hadn't opened it yet. At the time, it felt too heavy. Like whatever was inside would make everything too real. Now I wasn't afraid of that. I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. The house was already gone. My family had made their move. They thought I would just accept it. That I'd cry in private, clean up the mess, and let it all slide like I always had. But this time was different. This time, I had something they didn't know about. This time, I had a promise to keep. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed with the envelope in my lap. Me fingers trembled. But not from fear. From something deeper. Something like awakening. The paper felt thick. Intentional. Like she had chosen it carefully. I peeled it open slowly. As if rushing might break the moment. Inside were 3 things: a handwritten letter, a legal-looking document with signatures and stamps, and a small USB drive taped to the corner. I read the letter first. My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, they've done what I feared they might. I know how much you love that house. You made it feel alive again. So I made sure it stays yours. The enclosed document is a codicil, an amendment to my original will. It was signed and notarized properly. Take it to someone you trust. I also left you something else, a video. It says what I couldn't. Let them think they've won. Let them get sloppy. Then show them who you are. I believe in you. Always have. Promise me you'll fight. Love. Grandma. I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Her handwriting was shaky, but still hers. Each word was soaked with the version of love that never needed performance or perfection. The document was official. Stamped. Witnessed. Clear as day. It said, the beach house at 117 Harborview Lane was to pass to me, Ellie Bennett, sole beneficiary. Signed and dated 5 weeks before her hospitalization. It made my breath catch. The legal will read today had been signed just 3 weeks before she passed. But 5 weeks ago she was still taking walks down the boardwalk. Still remembering the name of her mailman. Still sharp. Still my grandmother. The USB was next. I didn't play it. Not yet. I wanted Maya there when I did. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at all of it in my hands. The letter. The codicil. The flash drive that might contain her final words. It didn't just feel like evidence. It felt like armor. Like she was still here, guiding me through the storm. I had cried when she died. But tonight, I didn't cry. I burned. Tomorrow, I'd call someone. I'd do what the letter said. But tonight, I whispered the words aloud. Words that no longer felt scary. I promise I'll fight. The next morning, I was still staring at the envelope contents when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. No greeting. No warmth. Lunch at Monforte. 1 p.m. Wear something clean. Claire wants to go over renovation ideas. I blinked at the screen. The same woman who hadn't spoken to me in weeks, unless it was through thinly veiled guilt trips. The same woman who just sat through a fraudulent will reading and said nothing. Now she wanted to have lunch. It wasn't a request. It was a command. I almost ignored it. Almost. But then I thought about Grandma's voice. Let them get sloppy. Let them think they've won. I typed back one word. Sure. Maya looked up from my laptop. She'd been scanning county property filings since sunrise. You really gonna go? I nodded. Not to eat. Monforte was one of those over-the-top, overpriced places where my family loved to perform wealth. The kind of place with tiny portions, imported candles, and waiters who said artisanal like it meant something. Perfect setting for a trap disguised as a reunion. I pulled out a simple black dress. No makeup. No performance. If I was going, I'd go as myself. Not the version they tried to mold. I packed the codicil and Grandma's letter in my bag. Not to use yet. Just to feel their weight. At 12:59. I was already outside the restaurant. Heart pounding. Not from fear. From something else. It was the feeling you get right before the storm hits. The stillness before the first strike. They were already seated when I walked in. The hostess didn't even ask who I was there for. Just led me to the best table in the sunniest corner, where my mother held court with perfect posture and a half-finished glass of white wine. Claire was mid-sentence, laughing at something. My father was pretending to study the wine list like he knew what any of it meant. Ellie. My mother's voice was light. Rehearsed. There you are. Sit. Claire's been waiting to share her ideas. Claire beamed, holding her phone like a trophy. The contractor says we can rip out the sunroom and put in floor-to-ceiling glass. Open concept. Sleek. Modern. You know, something tasteful. My stomach turned. Grandma loved that sunroom. She read there every morning. Claire didn't flinch. Well? She's not reading there anymore. Time to move forward. I looked at my mother. She smiled like it was all perfectly reasonable. My father reached for the bread, like none of this meant anything. I let them talk. Let them settle into their smugness. Then I said, softly, just out of curiosity, when was the updated will filed silence? My father suddenly remembered the menu again. My mother's smile flickered for a second, then returned. Why would that matter? I shrugged. I was just wondering. I was with Grandma almost every weekend those last 2 months. Funny, she never mentioned changing anything. Claire leaned in, elbows on the table. She didn't want to upset you. Obviously. Obviously, I repeated. Almost as obvious as her signing legal documents while in a coma. The silence was sharper this time. My mother dropped her fork. It clattered against her plate like a tiny alarm going off. What exactly are you implying? My father asked. Voice low. Nothing. I stood up. I just find it hard to eat when I'm choking on grief. I grabbed my bag and walked out without waiting for a response. Behind me, I heard my mother starting damage control already. She's always been dramatic. Outside, I exhaled hard. The kind of breath that empties something out of you? Fear. Maybe. Powerlessness. I didn't feel small anymore. I didn't feel invisible. I felt like a fuse that had finally been lit. Maya picked up on the first ring. You were right, I said. They're already cracking. And they have no idea what's coming. The next day, I showed up at Samuel's office unannounced. The receptionist gave me a look like I was a storm about to hit, but I pushed past her anyway. Samuel was at his desk, eyes darting between his phone and the papers in front of him. When I asked about the filing date of the updated will, his calm cracked. He swallowed hard, fingers trembling. He admitted the amendment was signed and uploaded, while my grandmother was already in a medically induced coma. He said he had felt pressured by my mother and the family, to make it all look legitimate. That they had threatened to withdraw all their business if he didn't cooperate. It was the kind of betrayal that sinks in deep, the kind you feel in your bones. I told him I wasn't there to judge, but that I was coming back with a lawyer. Someone who wouldn't be swayed by threats or smiles. Samuel looked at me then. Really looked, as if seeing me for the first time. I think he regretted it already. As I left, I felt something shift inside me. No longer just the hurt niece or the ignored daughter, but a woman who was ready to fight, not just for a house, but for truth and justice. While I was shaking off that meeting, Maya was already online, diving into county records, legal databases, and real estate listings. She found the timestamp. The will amendment was uploaded at exactly 11:42 p.m. on the 15th of June, the very night my grandmother was admitted to the hospital. Unconscious, Maya pulled up listings for the beach house. It had been quietly listed as coming soon on multiple real estate websites. Asking price $2. $9 million. No mention of me. No warning. She also found discrepancies in tax filings, trust fund documents, and communications between my mother and real estate agents, evidence that pointed to a well-planned sell-off. Every click felt like peeling back a layer of lies. The whole family had been preparing for this long before the will reading. When she told me everything, I felt a fierce surge of anger and vindication. They thought I'd be caught off guard, that I'd take what was given and disappear. But this was just the beginning. That evening, Maya and I sat side by side, the glow of my laptop lighting up the room. I hesitated before pressing play on the USB video. It was a recording of my grandmother, sitting in her favorite armchair, the sunlight streaming through the windows behind her. Just as I remembered, her voice was steady and clear. No trembling, no confusion, just the woman who had always been my calm in the storm. She spoke directly to me. She told me she had known about the family's plans for months. She explained how my mother had tried to manipulate everything for her own gain. How my sister Claire was eager to take what wasn't hers. But most of all, she told me I was the true heir to the beach house. The legacy she had fought to protect. Her eyes narrowed when she mentioned Samuel, the lawyer who had betrayed us. She warned me not to trust him. Not anymore. Then, with a softer tone, she revealed something I wasn't expecting. A secret she had kept for years about my real father. My heart pounded. She said it wasn't the right time to tell me everything. That the truth was complicated but vital. She asked me to be strong. To fight. Not just for the house, but for the truth and for myself. When the video ended, the room felt heavy. Maya squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I felt a wave of emotions, grief, anger, hope. For the first time since the will reading, I felt like I had a real chance. A chance to rewrite the story. To reclaim what was mine, not just the house, but my dignity, my identity, and my grandmother's love. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them win. Ellie sat across from Tasha in the small law office. The hum of the city faint through the window. Tasha had already pulled out a thick folder filled with documents, sworn statements, and evidence carefully collected over the past days. They started by reviewing Samuel's testimony, which confirmed the fraudulent amendment to the will was signed while Ellie's grandmother was unconscious. The video from the USB was next. Playing on Tasha's laptop, Ellie watched her grandmother's calm, determined voice expose the family's deception and name Ellie the rightful heir. It was the kind of evidence that could not be ignored. Tasha prepared to file an emergency injunction to halt any property sale or renovation until the dispute was resolved. As they worked, Ellie's phone buzzed constantly. Texts from her mother and sister turned desperate, alternating between threats, pleas, and empty promises. Yet Ellie felt none of the old fear. This time, she was no longer the powerless niece. She was a force with a clear plan and the truth on her side. With every call and message, her resolve grew stronger. She responded calmly but firmly, refusing to back down. For the first time, the momentum had shifted. Ellie was in control now, ready to take the fight where it needed to go. Ellie stood in the living room of the beach house, the place that had been fought over for weeks. Her parents, Sister Claire, and Samuel were gathered, faces tight with nervous energy. She held the real codicil in one hand, the video ready to play on her phone, and a letter from the time capsule folded neatly in her pocket. She laid the documents on the coffee table, her voice steady as she reminded them of the truth. The codicil was legally binding, signed before her grandmother's hospitalization, and the video proved her grandmother's clear intent. Ellie warned them that she was prepared to take every legal step necessary to protect what was rightfully hers. Claire shifted uncomfortably, trying to maintain her composure. In her haste, she reached into her bag and knocked over a small jewelry box that spilled across the hardwood floor. Papers and a photograph slipped out, revealing a man Ellie had never seen before her biological father. Gasps filled the room as Ellie unfolded the photo. The truth finally out in the open. The family's carefully built facade crumbled as secrets spilled like broken glass. Ellie felt a fierce satisfaction not just for the victory, but for exposing the lies that had haunted her for so long. Ellie stepped off the plane into the warm California sun, the ocean breeze a sharp contrast to the cold Rhode Island air she had left behind. She carried with her a mix of nerves and hope, wondering if the man she was about to meet could fill the spaces left by years of silence. The address her aunt had given her led to a small art studio tucked between palm trees and graffiti walls, a world away from the marble floors and quiet halls of her family's estates. When the door opened, Ellie saw a man with paint-stained hands and eyes that held both sadness and kindness. His smile was tentative but genuine, as if meeting her was as new to him as it was to her. They talked slowly at first, sharing stories of the past, the love her mother and he had once shared, the pressures that tore them apart, and the years spent wondering what might have been. He showed her his paintings, bursts of color and movement that captured the light and waves of the nearby coast. Ellie felt a familiar stir in her chest, recognizing the same creative spirit she had always carried but never fully understood. They spent hours talking, the conversation flowing like old friends reconnecting. In that studio, surrounded by canvases and memories, Ellie felt a sense of peace she hadn't known she was searching for. The truth about her father wasn't just a revelation, it was a healing, a bridge to a part of herself that had been hidden but was finally coming home. Ellie stood on the porch of the beach house, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The house was no longer just a family heirloom tangled in betrayal and lies. It had become something new, a place of hope, a sanctuary for children who might never have had the chance to discover their own creativity. She decided not to press charges against her family. The legal battles and public exposure had already taken their toll on all of them. Instead, she chose a path her grandmother would have been proud of. The house was transformed into a free art school, a place where kids from underserved communities could come to paint, learn, and find their own voices. Justice, Ellie realized, was not always about revenge or punishment. It was about reclaiming what mattered and using it to build something better. Her grandmother's true legacy was not the bricks or the property lines. It was the love and strength she passed down, the quiet power to rise above and create. As Ellie watched the first group of children laughing and splashing color onto canvases, she felt a quiet triumph settle inside her. This was what winning really looked like, not destruction, but rebirth. Not bitterness, but grace. The house that had once been a battleground was now a beacon of possibility. In that moment, Ellie understood that sometimes justice looks like letting go of anger, of old wounds, and embracing the future with open arms. Her fight had been worth it. Not for what she took back, but for what she was now able to give. The grand opening of the community art gallery was unlike anything Ellie had ever imagined. The old beach house had been transformed completely. Walls once silent and cold now glowed with vibrant colors from paintings created by children from all walks of life. Guests wandered through rooms filled with light and laughter. Canvases lined the sunroom where Ellie's grandmother used to sit, now bursting with youthful energy and creativity. The scent of fresh paint mingled with the salty ocean breeze drifting through open windows. Ellie stood quietly by the doorway, watching the joy ripple through the space. The journey to this moment had been long and painful, but now everything felt right. Her mother arrived unexpectedly, thinner and less polished than before. Ellie welcomed her cautiously, offering a seat among the guests. She made it clear that while her mother was welcome here, the past could not be rewritten or forgotten. Boundaries had been set, truths spoken, and the path forward was one of honest connection, not false pretenses. As the sun set beyond the waves, Ellie felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. She was living the life her grandmother had dreamed of, a life rooted in love, truth, and the power of creation. The gallery was more than a place to display art. It was a testament to resilience and the beauty of new beginnings. In that moment, Ellie knew she had finally come home,